and welcome back to In Search of Success, the podcast where we discuss, dissect, and deconstruct various aspects of life, success, and leadership so that we can share with you the tools and the techniques and the strategies and the tactics and the formulas and the frameworks you need to bring your ideas to life, to turn your dreams into reality, and to achieve anything you set your mind to. This week, we have a very special guest, and she is a mother, she's a teacher, and she is a leader, right? And when you combine these three personalities into one, it becomes a huge package, and that's the episode I have for you. It's huge in terms of lessons learned, in terms of metaphors to explain the various aspects of leadership so simply in a simplified manner. She has done a fabulous job, and she was free flowing. I was learning from her a lot, right? So I hope that you will continue to learn from her as well. This week's guest is Paromita Chattopadhyay. She is the training head for Zee Learn Ltd. And what you're about to see is part one of our discussion, because the discussion was long, and she was just sharing all her wisdom with us, right, and insights. So the first part, we have started discussing about parenting and the lessons we can all learn, leadership lessons that we can all learn from parenting. Then we moved on to decision making, and then we were talking about feedbacks, and we were talking about knowledge action gap, right? So the traditional topics of leadership that we have been discussing over the different episodes of this podcast. Same thing we have continued, but she has brought in a very fresh and very unique approach and angle or viewpoint to those points. So go ahead and enjoy this episode. I'll see you at the end. Hello, Paramita. Good evening and welcome to the podcast. How are you feeling today?
Good evening, Deepak. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a wonderful evening, and I'm looking forward to an interesting conversation today.
I'm also excited about making this conversation interesting for everyone.
I truly hope that we are able to add value, because that's the single most important thing in my life.
Yes. So can we begin with your journey? How did you start? Where did you start? When did you start? How have you done so far?
Okay, so name is Paromita. My maiden name was Paromita Bhattacharya. Now, my marital name is Paromita Chattopadhyay. I'm a Bengali, but I've never really been in West Bengal, though I was born there because my grandparents lived there. And the old adage always said that the first delivery had to happen at the mother's place. So keeping in with that, my mother also delivered me in Kolkata. For the first 3 months, I lived with my grandparents. I was very, very attached to both my maternal grandparents because I've spent most of my summers in Kolkata, and whatever bit of literature, that is the Bengali literature that I'm aware of, I owe it to both of them. And the rest of it, once my mother moved back with my father, we've traveled the country quite a bit. We were in Rishikesh. From Rishikesh, we moved to Mumbai. Then we moved to Vapi. We moved to Hyderabad. And then we continued to stay on in Hyderabad for a very long time. So at heart, I'm a simple Hyderabadi girl. Okay. And even my, the taste buds are also very, very South Indian. So you give me hot rice and sambar, and I would like lap it up like nothing else. So even more when compared to fish curry and rice. Okay. And then I did most of my schooling there. I also I went on to study BSc with chemistry because like I said, I was a very, very conscientious worker, and my father thought that someone who got such great grades had to do science. And despite my bent for literature, I was still told that coaxed into taking up science. So yes, I went ahead and did science. Not that I had anything against science, but probably if I would have taken literature, my life course would have been different. But no regrets. I think everything in life is learning. So I learned well. I did well in college. I went on to do my MBA from Osmania University in Hyderabad, and I specialized in marketing and HR. It was a dual specialization. After that, immediately campus recruitment, and I started work. My first work was with Inadu Television in the media space. Yeah. So we were airtime marketing was my first job. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I said, being a young girl, and there's so much glamour, there's so much happening. It was action packed. So yes, I took to it quite naturally. Wasn't able to to work there very long. I got married and I moved to a new city, Pune. And then again, adaptability, like I said, being the key, I'm quite adaptable to new situations. So took it on and went on to work with Kodak and Data Pro in Pune. Till my husband got transferred to Mumbai, and I was carrying my first child. So both of us, my husband is also into sales. So we had two people who were traveling in and out, meeting at airports. So wasn't really worth raising a child in that kind of an environment. So after a lot of deliberation, I decided to kind of hold back and take a break in my career. And that break really lasted long. So it took me 10 good years to come back to my second innings of my career. In the meantime, I nurtured two beautiful girls. One of my older daughter now is almost 20. She's at university studying human-centered design at Shrishti Manipal, and my younger daughter is in grade 10. And when I thought of resuming work, and I tell you one thing that I am very, very proud of is that those 10 years which I gave to my children and home truly made the individual that I have grown up to be today. Because the kind of tenacity, the kind of resilience, the kind of things that motherhood teaches you, I think no B school in the world can teach you that. Time management, stress management, you name it. Every skill that a leader is supposed to have is there in any mother who single-handedly raised two children. So yes, and when my children were old enough and thought that yes, I could take something new up, at that point of time, thought went towards kind of move towards education. For two simple reasons. I've grown up in an environment, my mother's been a principal, she's been an educationist for 40 odd years. So that impression always was there. Plus, it also kind of helped me with managing my children's, kind of schedule. So I said, yes, okay, that's the foray. So I forayed into teaching. And because I had no, technical degree per se in teaching, despite having a fantastic demo at school, I joined the Vibgyor group of schools in Mumbai. They have a presence pan India. They have about 50 odd schools pan India. And I joined the nearest school, which was close to my home. And the other draw was I also put my children in the same school. So it worked out good. I was able to manage their schedule, attend their PTMs, be there for them all the time, and still got to contribute. Initially, I took it up as like a stopgap arrangement that till such time the children grew up more, I would probably do this and then go back to my first calling. But little did I know that life was going to take a 360-degree turn. And when I entered the classroom, I realized how much joy it brought me when I saw I could be instrumental in bringing about transformation. So, that kind of a gratification I had never got in my earlier jobs. And probably I think that was God's way of telling me that you belong here. And that journey, which started as a teacher in 2012, until now, I'm in the same field, education. I moved from teaching to training. Presently, I'm with Zee Learn Ltd. I'm working there as training head. We have about 200 plus K-12 schools pan India, and about 1,800 to 2,000 preschools pan India. So there's a very large network of educators who are waiting to be transformed, who are waiting to be touched. And in effect, what is going to happen is that if we are able to empower those teachers at school, they are going to empower an entire generation in their classrooms. So I think that has been my, major drive. My major intent has been to add value to their lives, because as a teacher, I understood what were the grassroots level problems that a teacher was facing. So I could identify with that very easily. I could come down to their level and explain it to them the way they would understand it best. So that way, the last 5 years have been completely into training, not just teachers, school leaders, administrators, everybody in the bandwidth of education. And I'm thoroughly enjoying my journey. So that is me.
Okay. I'll tell you what overlaps. My mom was a teacher for 38 years. She just retired last year only. And I've seen the gratification you're talking about, no? When you teach somebody and then you see their life transform in front of you, right? I don't think there is anything better than that. That feeling, that gratification, there is nothing better than that. And
I completely agree on that. So concur.
you said from childhood, I think there was a little bit of bias towards teaching. And when I had my first fight with my dad in after 12th, that I don't want to study further, I want to go for cricket and stuff. And he said, I'm going to stop your pocket money. I started teaching organic chemistry and I made my first money when I was 18, 19. So yeah, I was like, this is good. And still, I mean, I'm a coach now. So I think I'm still stuck there. Somewhere, I think that gratification has become a drug. It's a bad negative word, but I think I enjoy it thoroughly. So
I so hear you on this, Deepak, because immaterial of what happens on some days when I'm really not up to it or, not feeling health-wise too good, then to just the drive that I have to do a session for the teachers and they're waiting for me, I can get out of bed on any, cloudy day and still go ahead and do my sessions because I'm so totally driven about it.
I know the drive. You mentioned parenting. So let's go to the childhood. Do you think when we are talking about leadership, right? We are in the corporate world, and it might not be business leadership, it might be social leadership as well, like the Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela kind of social, Martin Luther King wala social leadership, or it could be military leadership, like Simon Sinek mentions, leadership is at its best form.
Yes.
You can see that, or witness that in the military services or the armed forces across the world. It could be any kind. But my question is, do you, or in your experience, have you felt that the childhood, does it play any role in making a person a leader? As they say, leaders are born or leaders are created. We all believe that. I personally believe that leaders can be made, right? With the right guidance and teaching. But still, there are certain aspects you can see from childhood, hey, this guy is going to be a leader, right? We all can feel that. So do you think childhood has a role to play in creating the leaders of tomorrow?
Definitely, because it is the place where your value system is getting made. So if the intent to give, if empathy, if reaching out for others and helping others is inculcated at that age, that is exactly what a leader is. And I completely concur with you when you say that leaders are not born, they are made, because I truly believe they can be made. Somebody may be born with a certain leadership trait, but if you don't nurture that leadership trait, it's going to die a natural death. So therefore, I think parents, early schooling, your environment during early years plays a pivotal role in how you grow up to be. And I think that intent to give, I think as a leader, for me, nothing is more important in terms of a leadership trait than the need to, or the intent to be able to give, the intent to empower, to intent to uplift the others. If you have these innate qualities in you, the other skills can easily be learned, because anything which is a skill can be learned. But I think integrity, that is, to do the right thing when no one is watching, and the intent to constantly be there for someone, if these things are there in anyone, and that can easily be inculcated during childhood. So my parents, in many, to be very honest, look, you have to be very humble in the way they conducted themselves, in the way she was always there for her teachers, the way she was always there for her children. So in a very, very organic manner, subconsciously, I had inherited it in my value system. So for me, it was always important to be there for people, whether they were your friends, whether there was your family. If someone needed your help, you should be there for them. That was taught to me right from childhood. And being humble. So my mother used to tell me, fables, which I, at that point of time, thought was a story. But now when I sit back and reflect, I realize what kind of impact that story had. I'll quickly tell you in a nutshell about humility. She would often tell me, have you seen a mango tree, beta? So I said, yes. Have you seen that when it is growing, when it grows, it is standing very erect? So in your childhood, you're growing, you stand erect. But once you become a little older, you develop your sensibilities and you branched out. Have you seen the shade that the tree creates? That means that you are supposed to provide shade to the others. So, and then once it grows a little more older and it begins to fruit, have you seen the way the tree bends down towards the earth, showing humility? The more fruits you have, that much more grounded, that much to the earth you have to stay. So in such a simple manner, with such a simple narration, she has, embodied the entire being of a good person or a good leader. So I think these are things which I, now when I reflect about the kind of learnings I've had through play, through stories, has made the individual that I've grown up to be. So I think very important traits of leadership was taught to me through a simple story. Be humble, be grounded, be giving, provide for others. Through one simple narration, she had conveyed all of this. And that is something that I also want to keep telling my children, so that when they grow up to be the person that they are, I hope that they look beyond themselves and are there for people around them.
So, yes, I could not agree more, because, yes, the value system and the belief system both gets developed during the childhood as well. So, that's when everything falls in place for a person. I think by the time you reach 12 or 14, you already have your belief system. Now, who is your friend, who is your enemy, you are ready to decide and you are ready to take a stand on that, right? And in development of that value system, your parents and your teachers play a very significant role, as you just said, right? And that is true for everyone, right? Now the question is, next phase. You mentioned about parenting, you mentioned about what it teaches you, time management, other things. So what someone can learn from being a parent, and I agree to that, because for me, what I learned, the first lesson it taught me is being selfless. It's not about you, it's about your kids now. It's not about your sleep, it's about so yeah, selflessness is the first lesson I learned as a parent, but there are so many others that they have been teaching. So what would be some of the lessons? Childhood, you said empathy, intent of giving and sharing and contributing, then being humble, right? Those are the things came from childhood. Now from parenting, what came as leadership lessons from parenting? What did you have?
Like you rightly said, Deepak, selflessness, putting others before you. I think that's the most important trait of a leader. If you know how to put others before you, nothing more than parenting can teach you that. Because suddenly it is not about you anymore. It is always about the other person. Of course, this is also because they say blood is thicker than water, and therefore, but I think that trait is inherently inculcated in you, because then you have learned to look beyond yourself. It is not about my wealth, about my learning, about my development, about my success, about my growth. It is not limited to that anymore. And I think what drives this selflessness very strongly is the happiness or the joy or the gratification that you see when you see someone else develop and you realize that you are the catalyst in that development. I think, that is phenomenal. No paycheck, nothing in the world can match that. So I think as a parent, selflessness, putting others before you, is the first lesson I learned as a parent. Then, of course, your life takes a 360-degree turn. And there are multiple things you need to learn to do. So multitasking, I think that is something that I learned phenomenally well after I became a mother. I have many other hobbies. I write, I sing, I'm fond of listening to music, I'm actively into sports. I realized that suddenly I did not have time for all of that once I became a mother. And despite the fact that I was not working, even 24 hours seemed less to do the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to give my child the best childhood that I possibly could give as a mother. And, during that period, I read up a lot and I realized that how important the first 5-6 years of life are for the child. So I did not want to not give my children any stimulus that they required to become the kind of person in terms of cognition, in terms of psychomotor, in terms of affective. I wanted all domains to reach the milestones as it was mentioned in the books. So for that, a lot of reading happened. And then I did not have time for reading. So I had to actually calendarize myself. And I learned another important skill of time management. While managing time, also managing stress, because almost zero sleep. So to be able to survive, to be able to smile, to be able to be there for your child despite zero sleep is managing stress greatly. So I learned how to manage stress. I used to, the moment I would get a little time, I would either, write down in my journal, because I think that I find that very liberating, listen to some music, take a quick walk. Those were the things I did immediately so that it would release the stress. And though that stress would not kind of show in my interaction with my children. Right. So I think that was another very, very important skill. I think one more skill which I developed at that time is communication, because communicating with adults is a different ballgame. and communicating with children is a different ball game. I understood the importance of non-verbal communication, how much of an importance non-verbal communication played to show your love, to show your care, to show the fact that you are interested in them. I think I learned that hugely. How to use eye contact, how to use that smile, that expression on your face, how to use your hands. I think all of that. So non-verbal communication became really, really strong during that time, because though you would speak to the child, I think the child is more observing you than listening to you. So I think whatever I said, it was not so much about what I said, but about how I said it. So the moment they would see the smile on my face and the twinkle in the eyes, they knew it was all good. And the moment they would see those frown lines on my forehead, they knew, no, this means danger. So, I kind of learned non-verbal communication really, really well at that time. So I think I definitely improved my communication skills to a large extent. And I think that not only helped me in bonding well with my children, but I thought it also helped me with the other relationships around me, because I had become more patient, very, very patient. So that was another one trait that I had developed. I knew that things would take time. So that fact, when you're younger, you are more into instant gratification. Abhi kiya, abhi hua, abhi here. Whatever you have put, input, output, you get so used to that. But when you're managing children, you realize there's input. There's hardly any output. But you have to constantly keep nurturing, and one day you will see output. So the analogy is that of a bamboo shoot. You have to water, nurture that bamboo shoot for 5 years without seeing a single spark, a single sapling. But if you stop that nurturing, that 90 feet which it shoots up after it grows will not happen. So I think children are pretty much like that. You have to constantly nurture them and not expect any miracle to happen overnight. But that patience, that resilience, that persistence, that yes, you are doing the right thing, you go back to it every single day, you continue doing it, and you know that one day all this input is going to have a multiplier effect and a 10%, 10 into 10 kind of an output. Yeah. So I think all of this I learned from parenting, and I definitely would like to reiterate this again, that I think if not for those years of parenting, I would not be the individual that I am today. So I owe a lot of it to the motherhood phase, initial motherhood phase, that I managed the two girls single-handedly.
Not complaining, but I think being a parent, it has its own journey for a mother and a father. I think you
Yes.
get a lot more out of that journey than we can get, actually.
Yeah, true. It has a lot of trials and tribulations, but the thing is that you have to remember, so when we start off, we can't really see the end, but the people who are able to see the end are able to do it with a lot more guts. So like Stephen Covey always says, begin with the end in mind. If we are able to begin with that end in mind, I think we can do a fab job as a parent. And I think the same thing applies to a leader. If you can begin with the end in mind, you have such a clear vision of what is it that you're expecting in the end. You will be able to plan, handhold, guide, mentor everyone in the team to align to that vision, because you're so clear where we are headed. If we are not clear where we are headed, if we can't see the finish line, how can you motivate anyone else to see that finish line? So I think that's a very, very important thing that I learned as a parent, and I have tried to kind of cascade that even in my leadership.
Awesome. And couldn't agree more. It's probably not the topic of the podcast, but it's kind of coming to my mind because I've read it somewhere recently that the next generation, right? They are a lot of, both men and women, they're deciding not to become parents, not to get married, not to become parents. And they become a trend somewhere I read. I was like, then we're going to miss a lot. I am no one to judge them for their decisions. But then don't you think what would be your advice to people who are thinking about whether we should get married or not, whether we should go for babies or not? Do you think any opinions, any thoughts on that? Because that article was pretty disturbing to me personally. Okay. So people deciding on not to become parents ever. Personal decision, of course. But then do you think they will be missing a lot in the journey of life or not like that? Yes.
So, I think, Deepak, to a large extent, I believe in the policy or the philosophy of live and let live. So I think to each his own. But I also believe that if someone has not been through parenting, they definitely are going to miss out on a very, very valuable part of their life. Because I do agree the pains of parenting, because the word itself, if you see parent, it is like paying rent and paying rent for the rest of your life. So, especially because we are Indian parents, even if our child becomes 60 years old, we can't really stop worrying. I think we'll never really stop worrying. But if anyone has decided not to be parents, because nowadays children feel it's easier to be pet parents than to be parents to children, because they feel that a lot of their life is going to be sacrificed, as they call it, because they have to raise children, they have to manage their schedule, they have to give up on their careers, especially the girls I see. So they feel that they have to give up on a successful career and things like that just to raise children. Maybe I don't really disagree with them, because I also had to give up on my career for a long period of time. But I think that it is not a loss, because you might not be making a great career at that point of time, but that does not mean you have stopped living. I think you're living a very, very valuable part of your life. So to all those youngsters or millennials, just like my two daughters, my message to them definitely would be that yes, it is important to have a career, yes, it is important to have a standing in your life, but it is also, life is will be lived fully or holistically if you have enjoyed each and every phase. And I think parenting is a very, very important phase in the life that God has given us. So if they decide, say, they might not want to have children of their own, but there are plenty orphans in the world whom they can house. So there is no need to have a child, but you should raise a child. I feel that's very important. Having a child is completely your choice, but being a parent is a choice you should exercise. So you can you can give hope to a child who's lost hope, and that the kind of happiness or the joy that they will derive from that, they probably will not be able to feel it or understand it till they actually delve deep into it. But yes, as parents and as society, we can definitely show them the brighter side of things. Unfortunately, many a times what they are privy to is the sad part of things, wherein probably their mother or their father constantly complain about how they had to give up on a multiple things. I can't go to watch a movie because of you, I couldn't go for a holiday because of you. So it's not intentional, but then finally we are all human. When we end up saying things as we are feeling, the vulnerability is kind of out there. So if those are the things that will stay with the millennials, they will want not to have children. But if we show them the positive side, if we show them the joy that they have brought us, we show them the pride that they are for us, and how much of a growth as an individual you would see, and the things that you would learn if you become a parent, I'm sure they will also want to be parents at some point of time. But yes, I would not want to impose it on them, because anything which is imposed, be it career, be it family, be it children, will never be able to give they will never be able to do it wholeheartedly.
Get resistance. Agreed.
So nothing needs to be imposed, because being a parent to teenage children, I've realized that either you have to logic it out with them and sell it to them, buy them in, and then they will do it. But if you say that I am your parent and you have to do it because I have told you to do it, that does not work in today's day and age. So either you allow them that logic and give them that logic why it should be done, and then you buy them in, or else you let them use their own acumen and make a decision. But whatever decision you make, you need to respect it, and then you need to live by its pros and by its cons. I think that is the important part.
Why it bothered me mostly, it's not about the trend and all, but I think the way I have experienced life, every coin has two sides. So
That's
if there is a positive, there will be a negative. So yes,
that's
if you're making a decision, just don't make a decision looking at the positives. Little bit of effort to find out the positives as well, and then you can make a weighed decision, balanced decision, right? Well, that's what was bothering me a little bit, I guess.
true. No, they have to show prudence in that, because see, when they see our interactions with them, they if they have seen the trials and tribulations, they are also seeing the happiness, right? The happiness that a family gives you. I mean, that you have someone to lean on. So you need someone, right, who will be your emotional anchor. If there is nobody who's going to emotionally anchor you, you need a family to anchor you emotionally. So I think when they see both this, I think then they can make a very judicious, prudent decision on what they want to do with their lives. But yes, finally, whatever decision it is, then they need to live by both of it, the pros as well as the cons. If they want a life which is only for themselves, then they also will miss out on the joys that come with parenting. So I think, yes.
So yeah, that kind of decision making takes me to the next question. Decision making as a skill. See, we talked about body language, for example. You non-verbal communication is that. Till I become a parent, I never realized that non-verbal communication is approximately 93% of our communication.
True.
I didn't know that for a long time. Okay. Similarly, when you come to decision making and leadership decision making, there is this conditioning. I wouldn't say good or bad, but this is how we have conditioned. If you have been in the corporate world for 2 decades, this is how you have been conditioned: data-driven decision making. Now, when you actually try and understand the process of decision making, you understand 90 to 95% of human decision making is emotional. Only 5 to 10% is logical, right? So, what's been your experience around decision making? And if you are mentoring a certain leader or certain upcoming leader, right? How would you guide them towards so that they can become effective decision makers? Understanding that decisions are mostly driven by emotions, though we first make emotional decisions and then justify them with all kinds of logic, right? That's the steps. So how would you mentor them? How would you help them become effective decision makers, leaders of tomorrow?
Decision making is not a skill that you learn after you grow up. I think decision making and problem solving are skills which you learn right from childhood. So if you have very overbearing parents or helicopter parents, then they don't allow you that decision making. I'm saying this from a personal experience I have in the family, wherein the parents were so overtly protective about the child that right from the thing that what he was supposed to wear, to what he was supposed to eat, when he was supposed to study, when he was supposed to sleep, everything was as per a timetable. So you are not allowing the child to ever use his cognition or metacognition to make a decision for himself or herself. So you have done that for first 18 years of his life. Then suddenly one day when the child is entering his undergrad, you tell him, "Ye kya hai? Why don't you take your own decisions? Why aren't you able to do it this way?" Pretty much they did not realize that they were the hindrance or they were the roadblock in the entire skill of decision making. You never allowed the child the skill, to that particular skill, to be able to, he hasn't been exercising that skill ever since he was born. So one fine day when you think he's an adult and you're expecting him to take important decisions when you've not even allowed him simple decisions like what to eat for dinner. So how is it that the parent is expecting? So decision making as a skill has to be integrated into the child very early. You have to allow the child to take decisions, good or bad, and tell them that you have their back. So even if the decision is wrong, they're not going to fall flat. Only when you give them that scaffolding, that yes, you take a decision, weigh the pros and cons and take a decision. Even if the decision does not work out in the very best interest, do not worry, you have our back. And we are there to scaffold you. When you give the person, a child, that kind of cushioning, that yes, they are allowed mistakes, they are allowed to falter, and then people are there to support them, that's when they will be enabled to decision making. And I think it's the very same thing for any member in your team.
Exactly.
Allow them mistakes. Do not be a leader who's going to run them down, who's going to humiliate them, who's going to malign them every time they make a mistake. Because if you do not allow them to make a mistake, they will never be able to take a decision, for the fear that they will be humiliated, for the fear that the decision, if gone wrong, is going to ruin their career. So I think that is the most important thing, which as a parent you need to do. And then definitely as a leader you need to do, that you allow them decisions, guide them in the process of decision making, but do not take the decision for them. Yeah. And like Simon Sinek says, leaders speak last, leaders eat last. You cannot enter a boardroom and say, this is the problem, this is my solution, now tell me, all of you, what is your thought on it. Who's ever going to overrule the boss? No one. So leaders need to speak last. You allow everyone the opportunity to give their solution to the problem. Then, in a very democratic manner, you kind of, from divergence, you come to convergence. Put down the best three solutions that have come up, add to that solution. Only then will you be able to create decision makers. As leaders, our job is to create more leaders, not create more followers. Unfortunately, most of us as leaders get so consumed by that position, that power, that we only look at followers. Social media is also constantly propagating that. On Instagram, you have 5 million followers. On Facebook, you have 10 million followers. On LinkedIn, you have 100 million connections. Everywhere the environment now on social media is about creating followers, which I feel is completely against the philosophy of leadership, wherein we are not supposed to create followers, we are supposed to create leaders. So allow them their mistakes, give them the resource to try out new things, and tell them, in a worst comes worst situation, if you fall, you have my back. So do not worry, go all out, give it your best, and be rest assured, you will not be maligned, you will not be humiliated. Instead, we will try and make a success out of you. So if you do that, I think that is all that is required. If anyone comes to me and asks me, how will you inculcate decision making or problem solving skills? I will just tell them, allow them to take a decision.
Freedom to make decisions.
Give them the freedom to make decisions. I can narrate one thing here that I had read from Simon Sinek, in which he says that the best form of leadership is actually parenting. And he talks of 4 very valuable things.
Okay.
First thing that a parent does is provide opportunities for the child to grow. Similarly, a leader needs to provide all the opportunities, allowing them all the decisions to explore those opportunities.
Right.
Point 2, provide them the resources to carry out those opportunities. You cannot say you will lead the project and then hold back all resources and not allow them any resources. How will they lead the project? Similarly, if you have told your child that you have to learn swimming, you have to provide the resources for swimming. Provide them a pool, provide them an instructor, buy them the swimming gear. So you provide all resources. First, you give them an opportunity, then you provide the resources. Similarly, as a leader, you first give them the opportunity to take a decision, provide resources to allow the progress on that decision. Third thing, if they are going wayward, because sometimes people or children can go wayward, when they are having those resources, they might exploit those resources, or they might not use it in the best way possible. Bring them back online, discipline them. Parent will discipline them. Similarly, the leader will also discipline them. So he or she needs to say, okay, I gave you the opportunity, I gave you the resources, but you're not using the resources in the right manner. There is overspending, or there is, improper allocation of resources. So that is the time you're supposed to bring them in, or align them, or discipline them. Point number 3. And if they do well, if they fall in line, if they are able to excel, appreciate, share credit, just like you would do as a parent. So 4 simple steps, whether it is leadership, whether it is parenting, it will never fail you. So I think, pretty much everything that a leader needs to do gets summed up in these 4 simple things. You provide them opportunities, give them resources, discipline them when they are going wayward, and appreciate them when they are doing right, or appreciate their efforts. They might have done 70% right, 30% wrong. Appreciate the 70% so that they are motivated to work on the 30%. If you start your feedback by saying you did this wrong, your team member or your child is already close and is not really willing to listen what they did right.
Right.
So when we speak of sandwich feedback approach model, that's exactly what we do. We always start with appreciation. Then you go to evaluation. You tell them areas of improvement, and you close it with coaching, where you tell them you did great on these, but this is the way forward. So if it is appreciation, evaluation, and coaching, that feedback is the best feedback that you can give. So I think whether it is parenting, whether it is leadership, you follow these simple 4 rules, I don't think you'll ever fail.
Amazing. I mean, the job of a coach or a mentor is to simplify things so that it stays with people, right? Simplified leadership into the 4 steps. So appreciate it. Awesome. But here's the question. Most of the time when I talk to leaders, coach them, work with them, or whatever I do, friends also, right? Most of them know these things. Simon Sinek is pretty famous. Everybody has read the book as well. But when it comes to workplace, doing the things, following the 4 steps, implementing the same is a challenge. So the way I say it, 99% of the world's problem or life's problem is about the CAG or knowledge action gap. Why? We know what is good for our team, what will make them productive. And if my team is producing, they're productive, they're achieving the goals, I will definitely go up as a leader, right? They will grow, they'll come to my place, I'll go to some other place, right? So even though we know all this, why there exists a knowledge action gap? What is the reason?
There are multiple reasons. I think one is our internal blocks, which we say in Hindi, there is a word called Gyan Papi.
Okay.
Gyan Papi essentially means someone who knows everything, who has the knowledge of the world, but does not have the wisdom to implement the knowledge.
Okay.
So I think that's where the gap is. There is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing what is right. Wisdom is being able to pick what works from that knowledge and implementing it in reality. So knowledge, like you said, every single leader in the world has the knowledge.
Yes.
They have the certification, they have the academic qualification, they have the resources, they have the position, they have everything. So knowledge wise, and they have taken multiple skill courses, they've attended million trainings. So
Yes.
skills are also there. Now, where the problem is the attitude. So attitude tells you, so K and S. So in the KSA, the K and S are sorted. They are 100 on 100 on K, or they are 100 on 100 on S.
Right.
But they are not 100 on 100 in A, in their affective domain or in their attitude. So because of that, they do not have the wisdom to be able to understand that, if I have this knowledge and if I'm able to use it in this context where my team grows and then I grow, that's where they're not able to do, it's not getting action basically, so everything is there. They have all the resources, but to implement that resource into action, you need wisdom. And I think that's where the block comes, because these are attitudinal blocks. From my experience, I can say many leaders that I have worked with also score 100 on 100 in K, or 100 on 100 in S. But attitude wise, I think there is a problem because there is a lot of insecurity. I feel that is something that never leaves them. They have this fear.
Every time.
Sorry?
That's the keyword I get every time, insecurity.
Yes, and I have witnessed it at so many levels that it is at times appalling, because I feel that once you reach a certain level in your career or in your age or in your seniority, the intent to give should be higher, because you have seen the roadblocks you faced when you were rising. You did not get a hand to who would hold you and who would mentor you. So don't you want to be that hand for someone else?
Exactly.
So do you want them to suffer because you suffered? Is it like an eye for an eye so that the whole world becomes blind? Is that the thought? If you continue that way, then the world will become blind. Many a time. So if you think of it as a parent, Deepak, I'm sure you would agree that as a child, there were many things I did not get because my parents did not have those resources. But when I became a parent, I want to provide all that and more to my children. So as a leader, why can't you think the same way? As when I was rising, there was no one to hold me, no one to mentor me, no one to guide me. Now that I have this position, can I not be that mentor? Can I not be that person who will guide the team members to reach that place? What is the insecurity? Just because I suffered, you suffered too. I had a hard time, you have a hard time too. That's really not the way life can move ahead. So I think that insecurity is something that is causing the major dent. Otherwise, there is no lack of knowledge, there is no lack of skill. So everything that they know can be implemented. But you need to have the attitude, you need to have that positivity, you need to have that empathy, you need to have that selflessness to be able to do it. You need to have that wisdom more than anything else to do it. I feel that is where the crux of the matter is. We are all very knowledgeable, but we are not really very wise.
Said an eye for an eye. I was not thinking that. I was thinking, I remember this discussion. Why are you ragging here? हॉस्टल में मेरा भी रैगिंग हुआ था, just the same way
So that's what I said, so that's what Mahatma Gandhi said, that an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind, so we can't work with that. In a blind world, how would we survive? So if you think of your sustainability also, you need to have someone who will be your hands, right? As a leader, you may be the brain, but you need hands to implement. So empower those hands so that whatever is here, whatever is your vision, whatever is your end, they will take you to that vision. If you're going to constantly be the roadblock, how are we ever going to reach that end? So be wise is my request to every leader, because I have personally also been kind of subjected to this kind of insecurities, wherein suddenly the leader feels that, oh, she knows more than me, or if I give her that opportunity, she might overshadow my being. So but the thought is never that. They say शिष्य हमेशा गुरु से आगे जाता है. So if the shishya is good, empower the shishya. You will still remain the guru. Nobody can ever take that title away from you. So where is this insecurity, and why is this insecurity? I have never been able to understand. So that is something, I think that's where the gap is. So everyone knows everything, but just the fact that they do not have the wisdom to be able to implement it.
That's why this particular question keeps puzzling me till today, because I don't understand the insecurity part.
Yeah.
Simple. If you come to my place, take my place, I will go to the next level, or I'll go out somewhere else. And
Right.
I should be grateful to have that opportunity to make an impact in your career and your life.
Correct. I think finally life is about two things, income and impact. If you let income overpower impact, then you might be rich, but you'll never be wealthy.
Happy.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Somebody who has money but has no gratification because they could not create an impact will only be rich. They will never be wealthy. If you want to be rich and wealthy, then income and impact, both the things have to be working simultaneously. And for me, impact would be overweighing or overshadowing income, because I feel that I have got with God's blessings, I have enough that I can sustain myself. So I'm not greedy. But yes, I'm greedy to be able to impact lives. I want everyone to know that if they have any need, they can always touch base with me. So I have people in my team who I have worked with maybe 6 years, 7 years back. Even today, when they're applying for a job, they come back to me and say, ma'am, can you give us a recommendation? Can you fill in my recommendation form? So I think I have achieved what I had set out to achieve. If they still have that trust in me, that, even after so many years, if we touch base with our leader, she will give us a good recommendation. She will always have our back. What more do you want from life? Which paycheck can match this?
Yes. Why I asked and decision making, and what is the gap in decision making or knowledge action gap? Because I see it, people, there were a lot of discussions a few years back around, and it's a continuous discussion. Why the CXOs get paid so much, right? My answer to that was kind of, you get paid more because of the consequences of your decision. If I'm a fresher, my decisions and activities and actions, the consequence will impact only me. When I become a team lead, my decisions and the consequences of decision is now impacting 4 people. At the CXO level, any decision I'm making is going to impact a few thousand lives, right, across the globe, and not only employees, customers as well. So because of that, you are paid so much because you are responsible for the decision as well as the consequence, right? That's why decision making is so crucial. And if you know stuff to be different, and your decision making and action is in a very different way, and there's so much of knowledge action gap, you know what happens, right? So that's
True. I think they get paid essentially for the accountability which vests on them. They become automatically accountable for the 4,000 people who are on roll with them. So every decision, whether it is a pay cut, whether it is expansion, whether it's a merger, whether it's an acquisition, whether it's a new policy, they have to envision it in such a way that they know that 4,000 people are going to get impacted. So it becomes a very, very crucial. So see, like you mentioned earlier, yes, data-driven decision making is very important. But while you are analyzing data to take a decision, do not forget that the decision is going to impact people. So while you analyze data, keep the people quotient also in mind, because if we were dealing with furniture and you only went by the counts and the graphs and the percentages, works well. But all of that is actually going to impact lives. It's going to impact people. So while data driven decision making is very crucial, it really helps us in sorting out and doing away or weeding out the things that we should not be doing. But when the final decision making is being done, it's very important to remember that it's finally going to impact people. So you cannot segregate people driven decision making from data driven decision making. You have to know how to find a fine balance, and that's why you are at the CXO position, so that you're able to do that. Otherwise we would have asked the middle management to take that decision, because they are also managers, so they also can take that decision. But I think because we trust you with that wisdom to be able to balance the two out and take a decision which works well both for the organization in terms of numbers and in terms of people, only then that decision is a good decision to go through.
So you mentioned management. Let me spin it back to you. Management, leadership, what is the difference?
The essential difference between managers and leaders, according to me, is one is very, very number driven and one is people driven. So as a manager, my task was, when I was at very early in my career, whatever numbers were given to me, March ending, you need to have XYZ numbers. So I was singularly driven to achieve the numbers. Really, at that point of time, no other thought used to come to me. So I would, then I know this is the number we have to achieve and this is my team. So I divided basis their strengths and just tell them that this has to happen. So it was completely getting the task done, getting the numbers in. At that point of time, I did not have the wisdom to understand that maybe if there are 10 members, I cannot divide the target evenly across the 10, because their strengths are not evenly divided. So that acumen to consider the division of targets between your team members basis their strengths came to me when I became a leader. So that's the difference between a manager and a leader, wherein you don't think only numbers, you think people, and people get you numbers. So I think that's been the major shift from my being a manager to my being a leader, wherein I still need the numbers, but numbers is not the only driving force, because I know if I look after my people, if my team is motivated, if my team is driven, and if they are aligned to the goal and the vision that I have, the numbers will come. They will spend, or they will invest a couple of hours extra to do that for me. I don't have to tell them, I don't have to push them, because they are aligned to me, because they know I'm there for them, because they know I have their back, because they are, they have that kind of, what do I say? They can just go all out and do what they're doing, because even if they falter somewhere in the process, I'm not going to admonish them. I'm not going to humiliate them. I'm going to back them up, because finally they are doing it for me. They're doing it for the vision that we have. So I think if you're just going to concentrate on your people, numbers, the people will get you the numbers. So as a manager, we are very focused on our numbers, and as a leader, we focus more on our people.
Got it. So basically you are saying, don't focus. I mean, numbers should not be the goal. People should be the goal. Numbers should be a byproduct automatically when you focus on the.
Which will happen is what I have seen. Because when I say that if you have a motivated and a driven team, numbers just becomes child's play, because they are so motivated. They don't consider it to be a burden to be out in the field for 2 hours more to achieve the number that you've told them to do. But if it was the other way around, where I tell them that today when you come back, you need to have 3 signups done before you come back at the end of the day, the pressure which is on them is humongous. So instead of doing it that way, I just tell them, we all together, we have to do this. So let's give it our best shot. Each one of you go out there, anything you need, just come back to me. I will provide it to you, because your success is my success. The moment they know that it is shared success, it is shared credit, believe you me, they will go out. And a motivated and an appreciated team member or an employee will always do more than expected.
Exactly. They always cross the numbers. That's my...
Always. They will always cross the number.
I remember somebody on the podcast who was there, he said, management is about transactions. It's transactional in nature. And leadership is about motivation. I have, over the period of time, I have kind of fine-tuned it to say, Management is more about optimization, whether it's process or number or whatever it is. Leadership is about motivation. As you said, once you take care of the team, they will be motivated to do anything. No numbers will be difficult there.
True. Though we still have leadership, among the 5 leadership types, there is a transactional leadership also. So there are some leaders who made even leadership transactional. Itna karoge to itna incentive milega, utna karoge to utna incentive milega. But I'm not really a big supporter or a big fan of that. I still feel that you need to empower your team, motivate your team, and the team will do its very best. So putting a lid on it that way really does not help, because in a way, the lid of leadership kind of ensures that the team also has a lid on it. So you have to remove that lid from leadership, like John Maxwell always says in his 21 tips, that the lid of leadership is a big dampener, because if the leader itself is having a lid, how does the team grow? The team might have the potential to reach for the stars, but the leader only wants to reach the sky or wants to reach the mountain.
Right.
You are putting a lid on the team because you have a lid on yourself. So just unleash that lid and just let them all fly. You just be the wing under their the wind under their wings, and that should be it.
Absolutely. You mentioned about feedback. Who is a better leader? Somebody who is constantly seeking feedback from all angles, peers, team members, and proactively going and checking for feedback, or somebody who believes in the saying that no feedback is good feedback. Who is the leader and why?
See, since you've asked me, I've been an educator. For me, feedback is very, very important. Even after I taught, I used to teach biology to grade 10 children. Even after the class, I had the habit of asking children, what could we do differently?
Right.
Because it is very important to know. So there is a gap between, teaching and learning. Okay. So we teach basis what we know. And we hope that the learning has happened accordingly.
Right.
So feedback or assessment is that bridge which helps us understand that what you taught and what you learned are at the same page. Otherwise, I would be patting my back and saying, oh, I taught great and I did great, because I never asked for any feedback. But finally, the learning and the teaching is like this. My teaching is here. My teaching is here and the learning is here. There's a huge gap. But to bridge this gap, if I took feedback and I told them that this work, do we do it in a better way? Can we flip the classroom? Can we do it in a role play manner? Can we add another activity? Do we take this up as a project? Do we go for a field trip on this? When I took that feedback from there, I believe that I could prepare better. I could plan better. I was able to deliver better, because then they knew that what was happening was basis their feedback. And there was certain accountability on them. Because I took their feedback, incorporated their feedback, made my class better to suit their requirements. So obviously there's accountability and there's trust more than anything else. They know they can trust me with the feedback. I'm not going to be in a way, trying to run them down, or I'm going to be in any which ways going to, take a pick on them because you gave me feedback. Whenever there is feedback, there needs to be a lot of mutual trust. The other person needs to know that even if the feedback is negative, the other person is not going to try and, take a pick on me in some other way. If my student thought that, okay, if I give feedback, my teacher is not going to assess me well in my tests or in my observations or in my journals or in my practicals, then the child would never give feedback.
Right.
Because they know that this is a safe platform.
Right.
She is open to feedback. We trust her. And what we are trying to do is we are trying to make an environment of sharing easily, wherein, each one can share without fear. So that they can give me feedback, I can give them feedback, and we both know it's for the betterment of the process and the output. When we keep the larger goal in mind, it's not you, it's not me. It's our objective. Our objective is to score well in the examination. And therefore, you give me feedback in the best way that you learn. I am giving you feedback the best way you can learn. And together we can create a process of feedback which is nurturing for all of us and which will help us to take ourselves to the goal. So for me, as an educator, feedback was very important. Today, as a leader, feedback is again very, very important, because in the process of communication, in the components of communication, feedback is an essential component. Otherwise, there's a sender there is encoding, then there is a receiver, there's decoding, and the encoding and decoding are poles apart.
Right.
The only way to bridge the encoding and decoding is feedback. So that's why most of the times, even when I'm talking, I always paraphrase, because I want to know that what I have understood is what you were trying to say. Else, you have said, I have understood. We don't know whether we are on the same page.
That's right.
Therefore, feedback or paraphrasing or summarizing is very, very important for us to know whether we are headed in the right path. But no feedback can be given or taken unless there is an environment of mutual trust. Unless people trust you, they will never give you feedback. So I think every leader should, encourage feedback, should give feedback and take feedback both. And what is more important is the feedback should be given timely. Because just like justice delayed is justice denied, feedback delayed is feedback denied. That's how I believe. You cannot come back to me after 6 months into the appraisal cycle and said, you did this wrong. So you're going to get a 2 on 5 and therefore you are on PIP.
Right.
Why didn't you tell me when I was doing it wrong so that I could mend it and today I would get a 4 on 5?
Right.
What kind of a leader are you? So if you give me feedback on what is going wrong at the right time and help me overcome those gaps, help me bridge those blind spots, then you will see progress. You will see me growing and we can meet the larger goal. So I think feedback is essentially very critical. And apart from the fact that it should be in a place where there is mutual trust between both parties, another thing which is very important is that the feedback needs to be constructive. It cannot be only, you did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. How do you make it right? That is important. So feedback always is not about picking a fault. It is about finding out the gray area or finding out the gap area and giving recommendations or giving suggestions or giving a plan of action on how we can better it. So any feedback which does not have the strategy on how it has to get better, for me, it's a useless feedback. It's a feedback which is zero. So no feedback unless it gives you an action point on how you can make things better. That feedback is redundant.
Right. Got it.
Okay, and welcome back. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed the discussion with Paromita, and I hope you have taken notes because she was sharing so much of insight that if you can take back, if you can start practicing at your workplace, you will definitely become a better leader and you will be much more effective in creating the workplaces of the future and achieving your organization's short-term and long-term goals, right? So I hope you have learned a lot. I hope you have taken notes. I will see you next Sunday at 8 a.m. when we release the second part of this discussion. Till then, take care and be limitless.